I'm usually the type to look at my old art and absolutely cringe at it, but recently I uploaded a video that showed my old art and I received lots of beautiful comments, but specifically one comment which said, "I'd love to see a video where you take some of your older works and redraw it." And I thought that was a really nice way of being able to appreciate some of my old art, so here we are now. Let's go through my phone and see what we got in my archives. As I scrolled down to the bottom, I got really nostalgic and started to miss how colorful and imaginative I was with my characters. I need to get back into that and stop worrying about what gets me likes, because surprisingly, a drawing back in 2019 got 123 likes, which is almost 100 likes more than my current post. So I don't know what to think of that, but let's continue. These are the 3 drawings I'm going to recreate. I chose these guys because they seem very different from each other and have their own style and color palette, but there's obviously heaps to improve here as well. Starting off with our first victim is this post from February 16, 2019. At the time, I think I had just finished watching Voltron Legendary Defenders and I was really obsessed with that Altean look like Allura and Kida from Atlantis. So with that in mind, as much as I'm using my older drawing as reference, I'm going to be keeping those 2 characters in the back of my head. Starting with the sketch, I thought of changing the pose, but I feel like that wouldn't make this a redraw, so I kept the same shoulder length pose and went in with a sketchy brush. Looking back at this drawing though, I don't think it's bad at all. I do want to compare it based off the time it took me to complete them, because this entire redraw from sketch to fully colored took me about 40 minutes compared to my old work, which I think roughly took about 3 hours. Something separate that I really want to point out is the brushes that I use and how important they are to my art style and my line art. The amount of pressure sensitivity that a brush can produce can really affect the way a stroke kind of falls on your canvas. You can see with the eyelashes here, the way that they fade out towards the end really brings an entirely different effect. What this means though is when I tried a different application or a different software like Clip Studio Paint for example, I struggle with my art looking different because of the brushes that I use. These are the brushes that I've used, by the way. The first one is my clean sketch brush. I can't exactly remember how I made it though. I just played around with enough brush settings and got this taper effect that I liked. The other brush that I've used here as well is the standard HB pencil brush that you can just find in PROCREATE. I've just enlarged it and played around with a few other settings. If you're interested in purchasing these though, I've popped them on my Patreon. Just don't purchase it through the App Store or the Patreon app on an iPhone because it's more expensive. I think it's like an extra $1.50. So just buy them through like an internet browser if you are gonna buy them. Going back to talking about the drawing now, I've just finished up the line art for the rest of the body. I also realized how strong I do the shadow underneath the chin, which is heavily inspired by I think like comics and manga. And the way I do hair is much different to how I used to do it. I kind of focus more on shapes and the overall silhouette rather than just sketching it in multiple lines to make the hair look full. Zooming in on the face now, I realize I do shadows very differently as well. I color in the top of the eyelid, underneath the nose and the top lip, and I decided to go a little bit darker with the hair and use the color I had before as the midtones, and I used like this zigzag triangle shape at the top to kind of show the highlights instead of just kind of scratching them in. So this is how the first one turned out. I feel like it looks more professional, but I also want to say I'm really appreciative of my old art because I don't think it looks that bad. I just think some of the anatomy is strange, like the shoulders are very smoothed out, but some might argue that that's just the art style. So it does look good, but also I don't hate the old one so much. So let's go on to the other ones because I feel like the last drawing that I did is my favorite because you can really see the difference between the two. With this drawing, I really wanted to focus more on the pose rather than the colouring because I spoke about this in my last video. This drawing just looks like she's mushed together. The hand underneath the chin quite literally doesn't look like it has enough depth. The way that her head is angled and the way her hair is coming off her face all looks like it's slouching, and I really wanted to focus that in this pose. And I feel like a big tip that I have, and I've said it again before in my other videos, is if something isn't working out or a line looks off, I just erase it and start again, because the moment a shape doesn't look like it's going in the right direction, drawing over and over it isn't necessarily going to make it look any better, or at least in my opinion. Obviously do what works for you, but that's usually how I kind of fix my poses now and like a silhouette of a character. So yeah, I will say, as much as I've improved with shadows and the anatomy, the lighting here is still really tricky. It's mainly because I don't have a reference that fits the pose, like in terms of the way that the light would hit the face and then the hand. So I was kind of going off imagination, but it's still way better than before. I can definitely see the progress in this one. This one is my absolute favorite, and it's also the one that I struggled with the most. You'll notice here I did the pose I think 5 times before I landed on the one that worked. I was focusing so much on the old art, and because I was using that as a reference, I was relying on a pose that wasn't anatomically correct. So once I put my new drawings side by side, I started to figure out my shapes again, and it looked so much better. I originally zoomed in on this drawing so that I could see the makeup side by side, which by the way I feel like I did so well in the old drawing. But separate to the makeup, I wanted to focus on features that looked strange. So the positioning of the nose, the squished left eye, the cheekbone and chin being so off-center to the mouth, and the ear being so small compared to the piercings. It was like completely overcrowded, but it's so nice to be able to see how much I've improved over the last couple of years. It's like a breath of fresh air at this point, because I feel like I've been so stagnant for so long in terms of like art progress and drawing, and I don't know, I just highly recommend for you guys to do it as well, especially if you're feeling down about your art. But yeah, that's my favorite one. Let me know what your favorite one is. I read all the comments, so I'd love to know your opinion genuinely. Also, before I wrap it up, if you're interested in the Patreon brushes, this is the other one called Sharp Paint. I usually use it for like alternative anime styles, and I'll show some other examples over here if you're interested. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Check out the Patreon, extra behind the scenes work over there. But otherwise, bye bye.